Partner with ZTT to make a record really fast. It was kind of like our intention was to sort of just do something real quick, keep it real simple, and record it in a couple of weeks and put it out as a sort of a simple little thing. And it wasn't like, we were actually thinking more in terms of the I Am the Magic Hand EP that we put out before Dance the Devil, that it was going to be in that kind of mood. So we went down to Kerry, brought basically a bunch of gear with us, borrowed some microphones, borrowed some gear, got to the place and got Craig over from this, and yeah, and he sort of joined in with us for that session, and we had a great time. Spent 2 weeks recording, and a couple of weeks after that just overdubbing and sort of, you know, fixing it up and making it sound really nice, and we were very happy. We had about 8 or 9 songs. It was going to be a short record, real simple, and we were finished. And we came home, we did a couple of gigs. Very happy with it.
I will write you letters that explain the way I'm thinking now.
And then I had promised some friends that I'd go see them in Chicago, and there's a couple of gigs I had booked in Chicago. And I went over to see some of the lads. Jason from Songs of High had got a couple of gigs together, and there was a couple of other things going on. So I went over and he played me this recording he had just made with Steve Albini. And, you know, of course, being a fan of Steve, I was like, wow, like, what's he like? Is he cool? Or, you know, because it's always been a sort of dream of ours to sort of work with him. And he was like, he's dead cool. You know, do you want to come see him? And I was like, no, man. Don't know what I'd say to him, you know, or whatever. But he was like, come on, we go down and see if he's in, because the studio was just down the road from his house. So we went down, and Steve answered the door, and he was the coolest dude. It was like absolutely no pretension. It was like I brought all this weight with me, you know, all this baggage that I didn't need to bring at all, because they were totally cool people, very mellow. And very quickly I sort of realised that, yeah, okay, this doesn't need to be, I don't need to be fawning here. This is, you know, this guy's cool. And within a couple of days then, from hanging out with Steve and just chatting, and we got on really well and talking about music, and he had a couple of days free that week, and I sort of figured it would be an amazing thing for me to go record a couple of songs with Songs of High. And I asked Jason and I asked Steve what the availability was, and they were all up for it and they were cool. So we went in for a couple of days and recorded. And during that time, I got talking to Steve again about the idea of recording a Frames album, and he was like, well, look, there's something coming up next month. I've got, like, the Breeders were in for 10 days, but they've cancelled. Do you want to come in and do that? And so I like, you know, there's a little bridge outside the studio. I tore across the bridge to the public phone, and I got on to Dave and I was like, look, I know we finished the album, I know, you know, it's done, but we've got 10 days next month with Steve Albini. Are you on? And he was like, oh my God, like, let's just do it. And so we went and we borrowed the money for the flights, and we borrowed the money for the session, and we came over and made a sort of a second draft of the simple record with Steve. Because the way it worked with Steve was, it was just like, it was very, very creative and very fast. Everything was like, you know, that take was fine. Let's just go to another one, and, you know, but it's like, but it was a bit out of tune, or it was like, no, you know, fuck the tuning. It sounds great, you know, going. So basically, we found ourselves in a very, very different headspace recording with Steve than we ever have in any other studio. Even the stuff in Kerry, even though we'd intended it to be quite fast, ended up being quite considered, only because of our history with producers and with engineers that were so particular about things being right. And we thought we knew what it was like to make sloppy recordings, and it wasn't until we met Steve that we realised how brave you need to be to make something that's just about the moment and not about selling records.
I'm just disappointed.
Whatever the question is, the answer is yes. Like, that's what Steve will always answer you in that kind of way. He's like, of course, you know, of course you can have all your friends come and stay at my house. You know, he's very incredibly accommodating to the people that he works with. And I said to him, you don't happen to know Rachel Grimes at all? And he was at the desk and he stood up and he was like, yeah, and he picked up the phone and he's like, what do you want her to do? And I was like, well, I was just going to ask her if she'd come and play on this thing. And he's like, Rachel, you know, I'm here with this band, a great band from Ireland. You've got to hear them. They're really cool, the Frames. And then we were like, because we didn't know if he even liked us, and he was like, you know, and it's like, are you around? Would you come down and, you know, sort of join in on a couple of things if there's any? And she was like, yeah, oh, you know, I've got. And she got on an airplane. She lives in Louisville. She got on an airplane the next morning, and came up and was there the next morning. I woke up and there was this girl in the studio, and she was like, hi, I'm Rachel. And I was like, wow, fucking. And it was like this amazing situation where a quick phone call was made. She came up the next morning, you know. It was like, she was like, listen, it's going to be $150 for me flight because I had to, you know, pay. And I was like, yeah, cool, because we, you know, had the money for their studio or whatever. And gave her money for a flight. She was like, listen, I'll probably stay the night. Is that okay? And we're like, yeah, cool. So we went in, me and her. I had the little idea. She sat at the piano, and in 20 minutes we had recorded 3 different full versions of this kind of improvised thing. And then she knew a couple of people. Like Rachel's people who were living in Chicago, and they come down, put on some strings, and it just, like in 20 minutes the song was done. And what I'd expected it to take, like, you know, like a few days or whatever, and I was thinking, can we afford this in our time? But it was absolutely flew through. And Rachel hadn't left home. She hadn't left her home in Louisville for months, and she was taking care of her grandmother who was really, really ill at the time. But the weird thing was, we'd finished the tune, and we're all sitting there listening to it, and I was blown away, because here's the music that I have, you know, albums and albums of at home on something that I'm involved in. And, you know, I'm sitting, and Steve's at the desk, and she's sitting beside him listening to her take, and I'm sitting there again, not wanting to put my foot in it and go, isn't this a great moment? I'm just sitting there going, wow, say nothing. Just say nothing and accept fortune as it is, you know. So I went upstairs, and Rachel came upstairs, and I was just saying thanks a million for the tune, and she was like, yeah, no problem, there's nothing else you want me to play on. And I gave her, and I started, you know, she was listening to the other mixes that we had done, and she was saying that she really liked it, and, you know, she wanted to play. Anyway, she got a phone call, and her grandmother had just died, which was amazing, because she got on a plane, came to Chicago, spent a half an hour in our company. Her grandmother died within that half an hour, and she was totally cool about it because her grandmother was dying for a long time. But it was really deep, you know. It was like, you know, I don't know, it was just really, and basically I said to her, look, you name the tune then, because, you know, that's, because she was really, you know, she got really sort of emotional in the studio, and so she got to name the tune, which was lovely.
Was that something you just thought, yeah, we're totally at home over here in Chicago? This is our, you know, these are our kind of people.
There's definitely a very, very clear parallel between that town and this town. In terms of its pace, I mean, New York is just crazy. Everything's going on. The same kind of thing is going on in New York, but it's almost like it's a tiny detail in a huge city. Whereas in Chicago, it's like the music, the bands that are there, it's almost out of necessity that people are, there's a sort of a very healthy distrust for anything overtly capitalistic, you know. And it's the same in Dublin. I believe in Dublin that it's more necessity, because basically we've seen the big A&R companies come in and set up in Dublin. We've seen, you know, our friends get signed up and get really hurt and then dumped. You know, we know it. We've done it ourselves. You know, there's been a few very close people to me that have come out the other end and not been quite right after it. So there's a sort of a healthy distrust for that system, the way that works, because it seems to take you up, dry you up, and hurt you really badly. And when we were in Chicago, it was like, for us it was amazing actually. We were totally buzzed up. We were like in John McIntyre's house one night, you know, and that's it. Like, it sounds bizarre, and it is bizarre, but there we were, you know, sitting there at this party after a Tortoise gig that Steve had invited us along to, and Corey from Touch and Go, you know, put us on the guest list, and we're like, oh my God, you know, these are all people you've heard about and read about in sleeve notes, and like, you know, and here we are in their company, and they're all totally mellow, like there's no bullshit off them at all.